I hear a voice on the other end say, "Mr. Harris, Todd's been hurt in an accident. He's been life-flighted to a hospital in Randolph." They bring him up to the door, and I said, "Son, Mom, and Dad are here. We love you." And his last words was, "Okay, Dad."
Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me." My name is George Harris. Are you sure you're going to heaven? Please leave your name, phone number, and a brief message, and I will get back with you as soon as possible. Thank you, and have a great day.
Hang on a minute. I'm trying to think of it's a, "I want to love you, see what I see the young thing." That's all you're getting. No more than that. My childhood was very poor, but I would have never known that because my mother and father loved us kids. So I never knew I was poor. We had a pump out in the front yard and had an outhouse and radiant heat inside the house. I actually went to church myself on my own as a little boy. We had two churches. One was a white Methodist church, and the other one was a little brick Baptist church. So I would see both churches, and my parents really never went to church. As a little boy, going to church by myself, I had missed 2 or 3 weeks because, again, I went by myself, and I remember thinking to myself, man, what answer am I going to have if they ask me why I haven't been there? And I remember fretting that all the way walking to this little white Methodist church. And there was a gentleman there by the name of JoJo Waters. He was a farmer, big man, big hands. And I remember him, he was ushering that day when I was going to go in, and he was at the door, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to be good. I get ready to go in, and he bends down with that big hand, and he reaches out, and he looks me in the eye, and he says, "George, I'm so glad you're here today." I just remember thinking, wow, what a relief. And I thought to myself, if I ever get to do that, I want to say, "I'm glad you're here today," not, "Well, where have you been?" If I knew I was going to get frostbite, I drove my truck. Trouble before Jason from our fire alarm company, just maybe have him.
Like a music video? You want to
Well,
sing, dance?
I might cut the rug.
Disco.
Yep.
Disco.
I
It's
can.
gotta be disco.
I'll tear it up. I'm telling you. I got married when I was 28 years old. I knew my ex-wife for 3 months, and we got married. And probably a year and a half after that, we had Todd. My fondest memory of him when he first come home was we lived in a little house in North Hill, and it had a little, just a little grade, not even a hill, just a little grade. And I had him bundled up in his coat, and I had him on my chest, and I rolled down the hill with him, and I just remember just holding him and looking at him like, man, how does it get better than this? It was just like, wow. Todd was the easiest child to raise. Would listen, I mean, you name it. He was the perfect child. The thing that makes him cool as he grew up, went to school, was just a stellar kid. I couldn't say enough of good about him. But he was one of those guys that when he walked into a room, he would light that room up. It would be, I don't care what was going on. He never had a coarse word to say to anybody, never had an edge about him. Everything about him oozed grace, oozed
cool, but he never looked at himself as that. He carried himself as that. And that would set him apart from so many other people. I can remember the exact day. My wife and I were sitting at the table, just yakking about nothing, and the phone rang. And I hear a voice on the other end say, "Mr. Harris, Todd's been hurt in an accident. He's been life-flighted to a hospital in Randolph. He was testing this equipment to failure, meaning once one thing went wrong, it was considered a failure. You didn't mess with it after that." Well, they had got an earth mover rim in with a tire on it. And at this company, it was the biggest tire and rim they'd ever tested. Somewhere around noon, 1 o'clock, as these bolts were coming off, they were literally flying through the cage, and it threw like 12 of the outer bolts. So he called his supervisor and said, "Hey, this thing's thrown 12 bolts, what do you want me to do?" And the guy said, "Shut it down and go in and take it off the spindle." Todd opened the gate to go in. Just as he got to the rim, and you have to understand, this rim is probably 4 feet high. He opened up the gate to go in, and just as he went, they said they heard 1 bolt go, 2 bolts go to take it off the axle, and it exploded. The amount of pressure that hit him, he was on one side of the shop, and they found him 50 feet on the other side of the shop. In that 50 feet that he flew, he actually went, the amount of pressure behind it blew him over top 2 tire racks to the other side of the building. They said he would lose his right arm. They weren't sure what kind of damage was going to go on in his torso or his head. We got to the hospital. We get in the hospital and they rush us off to a room, me and my wife, and they say, "Look, Todd's been hurt. He's hurt bad." They tell you a bunch of information, but the thing I kept sticking on to was, they said, "Well, we have to tell you," and again, there's a possibility of death. Not that we think that, but that's something we have to say. And I'm like, okay, and again, still trying to put everything together. Well, my ex-wife says, "I want to see him before he goes into surgery," because when we got there, we looked outside this window and there were 8 doctors around Todd. So you could tell they were rushing to do something. And so they bring him up, they bring him up to the door where we're at. And I put my right hand underneath his shoulder, his right shoulder, and I said, "Son, Mom, and Dad are here. We love you." And his last words was, "Okay, Dad." And he went into surgery. So we're out in the waiting room, and my buddy Mike, who's my accountability partner, it was funny, I don't know why I kept my eyes focused on him, but he was so gentle and so kind. He would stand in the background, and all he was doing was praying. The whole time he was there, he'd be in the background. A lot of silence, 1,000 thoughts. Stood out in the middle of the waiting room, held hands, and, "Lord, let your will be done." You say that, and then you send the PS prayer up with it, which I said, "Lord, please don't take him home. Don't take him." 10 o'clock, the doctors come out and said, "We're sorry, he bled to death on the table." That was a long night. you're in shock, in all honesty. When someone asks you, well, what kind of emotion did you have? I think you're almost emotionless. I've always had trouble with this question because I've been asked it a million times and I still have the same answer. I never asked the question why. That wasn't something that, for whatever reason, didn't resonate with me. It wasn't the question why as much as it was, how am I going to cope with this? The why I knew, is there ever a good enough answer if someone says to you, well, here's why your son passed away? By being able to help other people, and my job was mainly someone that lost a child, I would especially come alongside them because they would tell me, because you already know this is where you will fit in greatly. So I used it as a witnessing tool. It now allowed me to talk about Christ in a completely different light. Look at this. The ladies from BSF gave that to me. Is that cool?
That is pretty cool.
Look at that. Look at that. I always think about how when Jesus is, I can't remember if he's talking to the Pharisees or who, but they're saying, well, our father Abraham. Jesus looks at him and says, look, before your father Abraham was, I am. What a statement. Good stuff there. I'm extremely, extremely blessed. And what I mean by that is God and his kindness. Again, my son will be 45 years old just this past September. I miss him. Brings me great joy, brings me great happiness that I can even sit here and talk about Todd in that light, in the light of, yeah, it was good. Yeah, what a neat kid, yeah. And not just carry that cloud of heartache and pain. I don't feel that.